Hello, everybody.
Good evening, good morning, good afternoon. I know we've got lots of people joining us from all over the world. Obviously here in Europe, we are in the evening. Sarah, it's early morning for you, no?
Yes, correct. 8:45 a.m. Bright and early.
Blimey, not sure I could do it myself. In any case, thank you for joining us today, everyone. It looks like we're pretty much ready to go, although we'll give it a couple of minutes. I'll just kind of introduce myself. I'm Seb. I'm a country manager at Bloobirds. I'm essentially an account executive. I did come through the typical SDR AE route, and I'm super excited to be here with Sarah today. Sarah Hicks of Predictable Revenue. Firstly, congratulations, Sarah, on the promotion to SDR manager.
Thank you.
It's super exciting, I'm sure, for yourself. If you'd like to, do a quick intro so everyone can kind of get to know you, I guess, before we go on with some questions and have a chat.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yep, as Seb mentioned, I'm Sarah Hicks. I started off my SDR career as an outbound SDR at Predictable Revenue. Did that for a couple of years, and then just a couple of weeks ago moved into the SDR manager role for our client-facing team. So managing the teams that prospect on behalf of our clients. Yeah, and super excited to chat about this particular subject. It's actually a question that I get quite frequently from new SDRs or people looking to move into their first SDR role. This question around, burnout and tips to kind of make yourself as effective as possible without burning out. So I'm really excited to get into it.
Yeah, it's a super cool topic. I too am very excited to be talking about this as well. So yeah, before we get started, just to let you guys know, those who've submitted questions ahead of time, we will get to those. We have them, they're ready to go. And also we'll be answering questions live. So just send us a message in the chat on the right. And at the end of the webinar, we'll kind of allocate some time to go through those. And just so you all know as well, we are recording this, obviously, and it will be sent out to those of you who are currently missing it. In any case, I think let's get cracking, Sarah. No, if you're ready to go.
Yeah.
I think it's logical to start in the start of a day as an SDR, and something we I think attributes a lot to kind of self-care. I think as an SDR is kind of how you organize yourself in terms of habits. Sarah, perhaps you could give us a little bit of an insight as to how you would organize your day kind of for success as an SDR, as a remote rep.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that it's important to take into account, in my opinion, is where your prospects are. So for instance, if a big component of your job is to make cold calls, you need to make sure that you're calling them at a time that makes sense for them, not necessarily just at a time that makes sense for you. For a lot of reps, that does mean a morning little chunk of cold calls and an afternoon chunk. Like, depending on your time zone, it generally sits there. So I recommend blocking your day to leave times for those specific tasks. So you've got your, couple of hours for calls in the morning, couple of hours for calls in the afternoon. You work your way through the rest of the tasks that you have in your enablement tool after that. And then you leave extra time for research or whatever kind of is the most time consuming task that you have in your day. But absolutely blocking your calendar, I find to be really useful. What about you?
No, I completely agree. Actually, I mean, I was doing the same. I was working in a different time zone, although in Europe it was only an hour. I would take that into account. Also, I think as well, for me, for example, I'm in Spain and I was working with the UK market as an SDR, and understanding that potentially people's lunch break habits and timings are slightly different. So in Spain, we eat a little bit later. So making sure I knew that actually, when are the UK guys having lunch and when should I call before or after. So exactly that, kind of blocking that time and understanding really kind of when are those people going to be active, when are they going to be receptive to a call. Ideally, like the last half an hour before lunch, people would be just, I don't know, people would not be down for it because
starving.
They'd be hungry, I'm the same. But yeah, no, I completely agree. Blocking out that time and understanding, your target market and how they're going to work on a day-to-day basis as well is really important, not just kind of who they're selling to, but also how they work as an organization. So yeah, I mean, and I feel like getting into a routine, actually, kind of moving on to this is key, and also having little rituals or ways to kind of, I guess, disassociate. And something that I do, for example, I mean, a lunch break, for example, I might play a game of FIFA, I might throw some darts. I recently got a dartboard, and it's like a whole new thing for me.
Nice.
But Sarah, do you have any kind of like tips or rituals, I think, that people might use to get kind of the right mindset or to potentially get rid of a bad mindset?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a couple of different ways to approach this. From kind of the manager's perspective or kind of the team perspective, I think great rituals to have are ones that bring the whole team together and kind of get the team in the right mindset to, go off, tackle the day, and know that they're kind of all in it together. So something that we do every morning on the client-facing team at Predictable Revenue is have morning kickoffs. So first thing in the morning, 15 minutes to share some announcements, shout out the people who have booked meetings the day before, and get on the same page with kind of what the focus is for the day. There are a little bit fewer calls than normal. Let's focus on calls today, something like that. So kind of getting all together, getting aligned in the morning is awesome. And then personally, I think, as I mentioned, blocking your day is great for work. I think blocking your day is great for time off work too. So something that I do is go ahead in my week and block out time in my calendar when I've got, 3 meetings back to back. Then I need a break after that. I know that I need to kind of recalibrate and take some time for myself. So I'll block some time in my calendar. That might be for lunch. That might be to walk the dog in the morning. It might be to do some exercise later on in the day. Whatever that is for you that helps you decompress, I encourage to block that as well, because there's nothing worse than when you've got an empty calendar and prospect book, like you've sent out your calendar link on a bunch of different prospecting emails, prospects books. You're like, yeah, look at all these meetings that I'm going to be having. And then all of a sudden you end up with 8 back to back and you're like, it's getting less and less appealing every second. Now I'm scared. So go ahead in your calendar, create recurring blocks, or go a week ahead and create those individual blocks, but block your time for sure, because you want to make sure that time is there for you in the day as well.
Yeah. Me time is really important, I think. And I think that all that's, well and good, but sometimes, at least in my case, I do find it sometimes quite difficult to kind of keep everything organized by myself. I'm sticking in reminders here and there and anywhere, but sometimes I don't necessarily stick to them. Sarah, have you got any kind of tech apps, tools that kind of help you kind of go through this process, kind of plan out your day, or kind of make this process easier?
Yeah, absolutely. The first place I start is just the Google Calendar. So we use G Suite as a company. The Google Calendar is where I place all my blocks, all my calendar links, all my invites, all that kind of stuff. So it's really easy to create recurring blocks and kind of be reminded. You can set it up to remind 30 minutes before, 5 minutes before, 10 minutes before. But that's a great thing that I've always got open, and that's sort of the foundation. From there, we use Slack as a company. It's another thing that you can program to shoot out reminders. The Slack bot can kind of shoot things into channels and say like, hey, reminder, take 5 minutes, or whatever you want it to say. It's a great way to stay in touch, of course, with other people on your team, to let them know, like, hey, I'm taking 15 minutes now. I've got some time. I'm going to be offline for a sec. Or, delegate if it's something that you don't need to do specifically, and maybe somebody else can help you out with if you need that time. And then another tool that's been really great specifically for the content side of things. So when I'm working on podcasts like this, or webinars like this, or blogs, or anything like that, we use Asana as a marketing team, and it's really helpful for deadlines and project management, and kind of it's collaborative, so you can see who's all working on a project and when each piece is due. But it's a place that it kind of keeps it all organized for you, and you're not then responsible with tracking it in a G Sheet or a Google Doc.
Sure, absolutely.
What do you guys use?
Honestly, you've said quite a lot of it, like the classic G Suite and Slack. In fact, something we've started. I didn't realize you can change your little message or a title in Slack, and so that's kind of been something we've been having a bit of fun with. We've got a chief bowling officer in the office at the moment. But in terms of tools, I think people have heard of Crisp, but Crisp makes my life a lot easier, kind of not necessarily in planning my day, but in making sure that I'm less stressed than I need to be. I have a young cat who is particularly mischievous and loud occasionally. So having that kind of block my background sound is quite useful. I'll also bring into the mix Notion. I think it's a similar tool to Asana. I think we're using it in a similar way. I know that a lot of our product team and development team are using it to track projects, like you say, Sarah. We're using it in our sales and marketing teams to deal more with kind of where are we keeping our content, what content refers to, what type of content works best for certain ICPs. It's almost a kind of a marketing playbook, or a kind of a battle card to speak
Nice.
to the clients and things. So that's also really useful for our SDRs who are coming in as well. They come in and have a look at what's not in Bloobirds is in Notion. So that's a really nice tool, I think, for us as well. I think another important part of kind of again professionally motivating oneself is kind of your network. I know a lot of us are on LinkedIn. I spend almost too much time on LinkedIn. But it'd be nice to understand from you, Sarah. Have you got any kind of professional or inspirational influencers on LinkedIn who are providing you with a little bit of motivation or something like that? I don't know if you could give a shout out to anyone.
Yeah, absolutely. Somebody actually who has been motivating me since the beginning of my SDR career is he's a sales leader, SDR, specifically sales development leader on LinkedIn. His name's James Buckley. You might know him from the Say What Sales movement, I guess you could call it. It's a hashtag, and he creates content behind that. So he was actually a guest on one of our podcasts, one that was hosted by Colin Stewart back before I took over the podcast. And he ended up on one of my prospecting lists. And I didn't realize that he was someone that was actually a guest on the podcast and somebody I shouldn't probably be reaching out to cold, but I did anyway. And he responded really kindly, being like, "Hey, I'm not a target for you. I was just on the podcast. Like, don't prospect me, but all good." And I was like, oh my goodness. I replied and I was like, "I'm sorry. Like, I'm new. I didn't mean it. Like, thank you for being so kind and not just, like marking me spam or something." And he was like, "Oh, you're new to the SDR role. I have trained, hundreds of SDRs. I'm really passionate about the SDR role. If you ever want to have a quick chat about what you're struggling with and would like some tips, I'd be happy to chat." I ended up having a phone call with him. He shared some insight, changed my life, essentially, to put it lightly. Absolutely changed my life. And really like set me on a successful path as an SDR. I was struggling a bit, didn't really know what I was doing. He really motivated me, and he recommended that I kind of stay on the sales development path and one day try to go for sales development management, because he saw it's a male dominated industry. And he was like, this industry needs more women in that role. Go for it. And so I messaged him the other day when I got it, and I hadn't spoken to him since that initial conversation as an SDR. And yeah, he was really proud. So he's my number one motivation. He's like absolutely, literally motivating me. But other than that, following LinkedIn influencers or thought leaders like Cynthia Barnes, Beck Holland, Scott Barker, Josh Braun, who's the one, Jeremy Donovan of Sales Loft. These are all people that share incredibly insightful stuff. And that is really motivating for outbound in particular.
Yeah, I think it pays to be picky though with your influencers, because I mean LinkedIn is full of this kind of I guess dogma, which is I think I mean I'm the same though. I think filling your LinkedIn with the right kind of people is definitely the way forward. But be picky. And for me, for example, I'll give a shout out to a couple of people, because for me, I think generally as humans, I don't want to get too philosophical, but we take comfort in people being in the same boat as us. No, I mean, I'm not the only one. And something I liked, certainly when I started the job as an SDR here, I went out my way to find people who had also recently just started a job, who are being potentially more active on LinkedIn in terms of their content and their LinkedIn kind of profiles, etc. So someone like Scott Finden, he's just got a promotion to an account executive at ReachDesk. But he's been very active kind of through this journey, and it's been nice for me to know that, hey, look, I'm not the only one who's been struggling with this lockdown, working from home. I'm not the only one who's struggling with this particular way of reaching out to someone. So that was a really nice kind of story, I think, to follow. And he's not the only one. I mean, I can't think of anyone off the top of my head, but it's nice to have that pop up on your LinkedIn, I think. And also something I think that's worth mentioning from my side as well is having kind of non-work related, or at least kind of something a little bit distracting from, I mean, I know, we can procrastinate on Twitter and Facebook and whatever all the time, but at least LinkedIn is vaguely kind of professional and useful sometimes. And something that I follow, for example, especially in the wake of kind of this kind of new news era, is something like Cross the Aisle, which is a nice little project from an ex-SDR at Bloobirds. And it's kind of breached this kind of civil discourse issue. And it's really nice to have that pop up on my LinkedIn and kind of get informed as well, not just live in that kind of professional bubble, which I often found myself, especially during the lockdown. So yeah, I completely agree though. Having kind of the right network on LinkedIn really helps, I think, when it comes to kind of motivating oneself professionally.
Sure.
Before I go on, I will just say, guys, for all those watching, do ask us your questions. Do send them to on the chat on the right. And I'll come at you, Sarah, now with kind of the big question, I think, which is burnout. We've been talking a lot about kind of ways to combat that, and things to do to make sure you don't reach that point. But I myself have been close. I mean, we all have kind of ups and downs, and those SDRs, kind of the nature of the role. But when it comes specifically to combating burnout as an SDR or as an AE, I think as well, have you got any kind of tips, or how can one combat that, especially when working from home, especially in this kind of new normal?
Yeah, it's a really tough one. Any sales role is taxing because you're dealing with rejection. Even if you do all of these things right, even if you block your day, you take that time for yourself, you may have a series of like really hard calls and it's going to knock you down. And so having a good strategy to kind of take a second to acknowledge that, yeah, you're feeling burnt out, whether it's fatigue, whether it's stress, whether it's just dealing with a bit of constant rejection and needing a break from that. It's important to kind of recognize that you feel that way. Take a second to let yourself feel that way. Don't just kind of try to push through, power through, and keep going, because then I think you'll just kind of compound your burnout and end up absolutely crashing at the other end. So take that second to recognize how you feel. In an ideal world, you'll have leadership and colleagues who are supportive and who you can reach out to and be like, I'm exhausted. I need to take a day, or all of these tasks are piling up on me and I don't know how to get through them. I don't know how to finish them. Can you help me? So I would say that's something that's more kind of on the leadership side. It's your job as a leader to kind of create the environment where your people feel safe and comfortable and confident to bring that up with you. But for the SDRs who don't maybe have that leader that they feel comfortable going to with it, talk to your colleagues, talk to your peers, because absolutely somebody else has been through that. Go on to places like LinkedIn and find these people who share these types of stories, because the people like you were talking about, Seb, who are kind of in the same position as you, not necessarily these like upper echelon sales leaders and VPs and whatever, but the people in the same position as you, reach out to one of them and ask them how they dealt with it. But just take that time to acknowledge how you feel and to take a bit of a break and then come back at it from a new angle. Absolutely, the worst thing you can do is pretend it's not happening and try to power through.
Absolutely, I can completely agree. I think communication here is key, both internally and also with your peers. I think a lot of times peer support can really help. But I think the point here is that we're in 2021. If you're at a company with which you don't feel comfortable being able to kind of express these concerns, then there's some real questions to be had, I think, and especially in this kind of space, especially in these jobs that we're doing, I think like strong leadership, but also kind of respectful and kind of understanding leadership is really important. So all those SDR managers watching, keep an eye on your SDRs.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. I think as we kind of come into kind of our questions area, I think before we go on to any kind of questions that we've got, it'd be nice for the viewers to understand, Sarah, how I know we've touched on it throughout the call, but how you've kind of the journey you've had from SDR to SDR manager. I mean, I'm sure there's been lots of kind of meetings involved there, kind of feedbacks, etc. But perhaps you could just give us a really quick summary of just kind of how you've gone from there to where you are now.
Mm-hmm. So luckily I had a sales manager who took a very active hand in our kind of development planning, our long-term goal planning. So we had a quarterly development meeting ever since my first quarter as an SDR with predictable revenue. And within that development time, we would identify, okay, what are the specific skills that I want to level up? What's kind of a future role that I'd like to get to, or even beyond life at predictable revenue, if there's something that doesn't even exist as a job within predictable revenue, is there something I want to work towards there? And he would help me plan basically what I need to do to get to each of these things. So something that I wanted to do pretty early on was work more with people, because obviously as an SDR, you're an individual contributor. A lot of your time is spent making dials and not even having those dials answered. So it's not a massively social role. And so I wanted to work with people that could have been on the SDR manager side, that could have been more on the marketing side and doing content like this. And COVID, of course, made it unclear which way it was going to go. But this role as an SDR manager came up as we decided to kind of scale our client-facing SDR organization, and that absolutely fit the bill for me. So my recommendation for first-time SDRs or early career SDRs who are looking to kind of grow into the next role, the first thing you've got to do is nail it as an outbound SDR. You've got to consistently hit your quota so that you can show the leaders that it's worth taking a chance on you and moving you up into that next position. But also, in your company needs to show you that they're taking care of you and that there is that ladder that you can climb, or that there are those moves that you can make. If it doesn't look like they want to move you anywhere, that's another time where I agree with what you said earlier, Seb, where you need to take a look at if that's the right company for you, because that company needs to facilitate your growth as much as you need to, help that company grow. So do your best, talk all the time to your managers about where you want to go, and then take the opportunities when they arise. Maybe if you don't even feel quite ready for them, jump in and give it a go, because there's nothing that spurs growth like doing something you don't feel ready for.
Absolutely. No, it's again, it's the same from my side. I mean, I've taken a slightly different route in going to kind of the sales side of things, but again, it's not a big jump. And look, I mean, if there's a time to ask this question, I think this year is the best time because of everything that happened, the last year. I mean, it's the kind of the big elephant in the room, no, but like I potentially had, on the cards, I was looking at kind of events, and that kind of went down the drain with the lockdown in March. But it's exactly like, just clear communication as well. I mean, obviously the main thing is to do your job and do well. I think and hit those quotas, exactly, kind of basically book those meetings, but whilst doing so, remaining active in the company. I think being proactive really helps. Offering yourself up for stuff you're interested in. Like I ended up on a webinar because I like the media and that kind of stuff, and podcasts, etc. So being able to kind of offer myself in that respect, I think is something that's important as well as an SDR, to be able to you're not just there to make cold calls, you're there to kind of contribute to the company in general. And I think that's a key point when it looks to kind of progressing in the career path.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and also feedback as well. I mean, even if you're not getting feedback, then set up a feedback meeting with your manager, and if you're not getting still then like you say, let's the company needs to work for you as well. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a sort of a two-way relationship for sure. Yeah, but we've both done it in the end, Sarah, and I'm sure there's lots of people out there who will be going along a similar path, even starting a similar path very soon. But yeah, I mean, I think it's probably about time we got some questions. We've got a short while left.
Yeah, before we do that, we're about to get kicked off of this Zoom room. There's something that's happened with our Zoom account. We all need to just hop out and hop back in really quickly. You guys, audience, stay there. We'll literally be back in 2 seconds. Hold tight. Don't go. I'll know if you leave and I'll be mad. So see you guys in 1 second. Has someone slacked it to them or emailed it to them? Because I don't think they saw my link in the chat.
Uh-oh. Wait, I'll leave for a second. I'm back. Hi,
everyone. We're back live. We accidentally have left Sebastian out somewhere in the internet ether, so he's clawing his way back in. Well, yeah, he'll find his way back in a second. But as he was saying, now is the time for questions. So if any of you guys have had any questions come up about those time management tactics, so how to block your day, what way to do that makes the most sense for you guys and who you're targeting. If you had any questions about the tools that we use, one of the things that we didn't actually touch on was the idea of just a sales enablement tool in general, which of course is incredible for both time management and just organization in general. So Bloobirds, of course, is a great tool for that. Outreach, Sales Loft, those types of things are all great for, designing sequences, organizing your tasks, figuring out exactly what you should be doing with kind of each step of your day, each chunk of your day. If you guys have any suggestions on how you combat burnout and how you recommend, maybe you're a more seasoned SDR, maybe you've been through burnout yourself and you've got some recommendations on what some of your fellow SDRs can do, or AEs, or anyone really in sales can do to combat burnout, make sure that they don't get to that point where everything's so overwhelming and stressful that they do get to burnout. Drop them in the chat. Looks like we might have something. Miguel, why should there be more female SDRs? This maybe is in reference to what I was saying about James Buckley saying to me that there should be more women in SDR management. So traditionally, the sales industry is male dominated. Very, very recently, as in like 1-2 generations ago, women wouldn't be hired into sales roles at all. So because of that, all of the kind of historically here we go, we're back. I'm just talking to Miguel about why there should be more women in sales leadership. It was a question asked by the audience. So because it was historically only men were hired into this role, it means that if you look back to say, like, if you look at salespeople aged 70 and up, you can bet that 99.9% of those people are male, which means that kind of everyone that came into sales leadership a generation ago, were male, which makes it a tough industry for women to break into. Absolutely, it is much easier, of course, for women to get into it now. If you're working for a startup, if you're working for a kind of modern company, they're not going to discriminate against you because you're a woman, but there are less sales leaders for kind of burgeoning sales women to follow. So each time a sales woman gets to the point where she can become a sales leader, she's kind of one more advocate for the women, one more example for the women that maybe inspires more women to get into the industry. Because it's still today, even with all the women entering the industry today, it's still absolutely male dominated. So that's my answer to you, Miguel. Janice asks, what is the best data tool? Seb, what do you think?
Well, it really depends. I mean, there's lots of data tools for lots of different purposes. If we're talking something like, I don't know, like a database or kind of like a way for an SDR to work, I think I would be a fool not to mention lovely Bloobirds. Bloobirds is obviously, we do something more along those lines. I mean, in terms of kind of streamlining the day-to-day of an SDR and making sure that they have all the data they need in the right place. If it comes to any kind of also prospecting as well, having a playbook and kind of having everything in one place, like I say, is a really kind of key part of Bloobirds. But when it comes to something like potentially, I mean, something that the way I interpret this question is potentially what tool is the best to get data now.
Like list building.
Yeah, exactly. So whilst I'm a big fan of I mean, we've used Rocket Reach, we've used Lucia, we've used Lead IQ. My favorite one of the lot is probably Rocket Reach, just because of the certain the way it works and the ease of it working as well. Yeah, I mean, there's so many out there. There's a lot of things to done. I actually really like Snove.io as well for email addresses. It's free, and you can't get enough free tools these days. So for me, those are the ones we're using. I'm sure, Sarah, you've got plenty more. I mean, there's so many in this space.
Yeah, there are of course so many, and I think it does also depend on the type of data you're looking for, as in like who you're looking to target. Because certain data providers would have more information on certain industries or that kind of thing. But something that we found to be quite successful is a hybrid approach between ZoomInfo and Sales Navigator, LinkedIn Sales Navigator. So any data provider has its shortcomings. Nothing is going to be 100% accurate. So we find kind of putting those two things together, we get a little more accuracy than you'd get from just one on their own. And we find that creating a Boolean list of companies that you've sourced from ZoomInfo, so you've confirmed like, okay, these are the right companies, right industry, right, size, all of that. You get that list, you put it in Excel or G Sheets to create a Boolean list separated by the word or, and you pop that into the company open text field in LinkedIn Sales Navigator when you're creating a leads list or a lead search there. So you pop all those companies in, and then you just fiddle with the title criteria and the keyword criteria. So you're not looking just for companies, but you're just kind of taking those companies and then finding the right contacts, because Sales Navigator can be tough in terms of the industries are quite vague. I feel like there's maybe 8 industries on LinkedIn, and there are more than 8 industries in the world. So that is a great hybrid approach that's worked for us.
If you're an SDR and you don't have Sales Navigator, get onto your manager right now, though, because Sales Navigator for me is one of the, like, at least when it comes to finding and kind of not necessarily finding the information, but finding those leads and finding the right target market, things like that. There is, I mean, despite what you say, Sarah, in terms of the amount of industries, there is lots of like ways to filter that down. And I think I can't imagine being an SDR without Sales Navigator. So yeah, for me, that's
agreed.
When it comes to that.
Yeah. The other great thing about Sales Navigator is that it's constantly updating for you. So with any of the other data providers, most of them at least, you'd pull a list and then that's it. You've pulled that list and you can always go again and search under the same criteria. But with LinkedIn Sales Navigator, you're saving like a dynamic search. So you save it, and they know to keep looking in the background for more people that fit. And every time you connect with new people and all of a sudden have new second degree connections and therefore new third degree connections, it pulls those into your list for you.
Yeah, something I was going to say there is, as an AE, something I do on a regular basis is I'll have a list, an updated list, or as you said, dynamic list in Sales Navigator of all the people who have been a champion of mine when it comes to selling in a specific company. Because when that person moves company or when they change role, Sales Navigator is going to update me of that, and I'm going to be able to kind of reach out again and say, hey, look, maybe now is a good time to speak again. So from a sales perspective as well, it's also very useful. I don't think just the SDRs need to be worried about Sales Navigator. That is a tip I read somewhere, and I'm doing a service to someone who
honestly, that rings a bell. And I swear I just heard that or read that like 2-3 days ago. So I feel like we maybe got it from the same source, but honestly, what a tip. Yeah. Tackle target those people that have been your champion at past clients of yours or current clients of yours.
These are people who like your product. So if they end up in a different industry or a different thing, in a different company, well, let's have another chat, see how we can make it work for it. So
exactly.
From a sales perspective, that's kind of like a nice little source of deals out of nowhere. So yeah, for me, absolutely. I think we're pretty much out of time. So anyone who sent in questions previously and hasn't had them answered, don't worry, we will get to you guys via email. There'll be no unanswered questions here. We're not that kind of webinar. But yeah, lastly, I mean, thanks everyone for attending. We've had some great questions. We also had a really kind of constructive conversation. Little technical blip in the middle, happens to the best of us. Well, in the middle, at the end, whatever. It was fun. Sarah, I'm sure it held the fort very well there in the middle whilst we scrambled for a Zoom link here in Barcelona. But yeah, it's been really fun. Guys, if you're looking to kind of grow your outbound sales team, predictablerevenue.com, these guys have got all sorts of great stuff, not just kind of Sarah's podcast, but also kind of services, content, anything you want, kind of outbound sales. They're the guys. And obviously check out Bloobirds.com. This isn't our only kind of a webinar attendance. We've got lots of great content, and we've also got a really cool product that I think really kind of makes SDRs and AEs as well now their lives a lot easier in terms of organization and actually kind of getting some real kind of great learnings from your prospects. So the links are in the chat, and let's make sure 2021 is a better year than 2020. Thanks very much, guys. It's been great, and I'm sure there'll be another webinar soon. Sarah, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. So much fun. Really great to get to do this international webinar with you.
Exactly.